All right, you guys, you have made it. This is week 7. So as most of you probably figured out, week 6 to me, I really utilized as an informal or I guess formal type final. I really felt that after you had gone through all the different stages of what is a metric, how do you find a metric, how do get the tools and resources to make a metric, it only made sense for the chapter of building your business case to be kind of your grand finale. So hopefully this week gives you a little bit more of a time to reflect, to watch the videos I put on the website, as well as read some articles from HR magazines and news groups to see really how metrics are utilized in the workforce. So for chapter 9, they talk a lot about building your personal action plan. And what I want you to get from chapter 9 more than anything is ensuring that you understand how important metrics are. That if you've gotten anything from this class, that you realize that for HR to be a player at the table, we have to be equally as accountable, credible, and business-minded as every other function. HR is just a function within the organization, just like finances or operations is. We work for the business. We are in the business, and the business function we perform is human resources. Always remember, ask your business what's most critical for them. By aligning your goals and objectives with the goals of objectives of the business, that makes you relevant. Also, be proactive. Have a good pulse on what our competition's doing. Have a good pulse on what you feel the organization is thinking, so that you can come up with strong business cases for employee engagement, employee rewards, recognition, training, development, recruiting, all the things that we talk about, because those things are important, and the business can't thrive unless employees are in an environment that allows them to thrive. So know your deliverables, know what's most important to your business, know who your stakeholders are, know your competition, know your customers, know your clients, understand where the trajectory is of the business is going, and I promise you, you're going to do great. Most important, don't try to be all things at once. Take it slow, tackle one metric at a time, because that's how you will build your credibility and you will continue to do big things in your career. So as we round out the rest of this week, I'm going to go through a recap of everything we've learned over the last 6 weeks. As always, if you have questions, feel free to shoot me an email. The first 3 weeks of class, we started with 3 basic things. We talked about the 5 attributes of a successful metric: the quality, the quantity, the time, the cost, and the customer satisfaction metric. We talked about how quantity, quality, time, and cost are hard metrics, and customer satisfaction is a soft metric. Many times, human resources relies strictly on soft metrics, which none of you will do. You will use all these metrics when you're looking at building your business cases, when you're looking at internal and external data that you are going to measure for your business. We also talked about, the how. How do you collect? You can collect data from surveys, interviews, focus groups. You can collect data from counters. And remember, counters are things like in the manufacturing world, the widgets. How many widgets did you make? How many widgets did you not make? How much did you sell? How much did you not sell? When we look at tools for clarifying, categorizing, and making our data consistent, we looked at things like force ranking, the Likert scale, scaling, weighting, and semantic differentials. Those are ways that you put the data that you've collected or the metrics that you've collected together, and that you can create solid metrics that are more holistic. So you take your 5 attributes, you have to collect that data, and then you have to actually put that data in a way that is a consistent scaling across the apples to apples or the oranges to oranges, so that it's easier to quantify, it's less subjective, more objective. And then we talked about the internal data that you can pull and the external data you could pull. We talked about things from the company, like your financials or your operational. We talked about things within HR, your HRIS systems, surveys. We talked about external data, right? Benchmarking and how important that is. How you can get information from outside vendors and resources, things like SHRM, Empira, Okaba. We talked about looking at things like Conference Board, Towers Watson, Mercer, government agencies, and vendors. There is a lot of tools and resources at your fingertips, things that don't cost money. Go onto LinkedIn. Those data sources help you create a whole picture so that when you are building a business case for a bigger ask or a bigger change that you're trying to implement, you have everything that you need at your fingertips. We also talked about you're going to have, your own internal and external metrics. You're going to have dashboards and indexes. So let's talk about that real quick. So once you put either all this data together or you are putting data together for your own HR department, you'll have things like dashboards, indexes, alerts, and internal improvements that you're going to want to measure. As I talked about in my company, I have an internal dashboard. My internal dashboard looks at things weekly, monthly, and quarterly. I look at trends within my department, and then I measure them to the goals and objectives that we have. I also have more external metrics or external dashboards that go to the business, things that that are more high level, that are more relevant to what the business wants to see versus just me within my internal HR department. So let's not forget what the differences are of that. So we talked about my leave of absences and how many leaves we have and the time it takes us to get people back to work and what type of vacation and sick they're using or how many caseloads per person we have. Not all of that the business cares about. Some of it the business does care about. So we have my internal metrics versus the external metrics of what we give. Because there's lots of functions within HR, I can't have 20 things for each of the departmental functions. So what we do within my dashboards is we have a couple for total rewards, a couple for training, a couple for recruiting, a couple for employee relations. All things that are important to the business. That doesn't mean we don't have a more extensive dashboard and index that we utilize for our internal HR, our pulse, to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do. We talked about how you create these things. And I think the feedback that I gave every single one of you is you need to be able to create your own dashboards and indexes. Google, YouTube, LinkedIn, SHRM has lots of templates that you can utilize, but you have to know Excel. You need to be able to know how to do formulas, basic formulas, pivot tables, and charts. It's going to be very important for you. Dashboards show that you are measuring your work in your department. Be mindful that you're not over analyzing or over metricizing your department for the sake of doing metrics. Make sure they're meaningful. Make sure you're mindful, because if you're not able to deliver just basic services, you're going to frustrate your business. So really make sure that you have a foundation for every department that you're in for what you're doing. And even if your HR department doesn't have it yet, make one for yourself. Think about what you do. What are your daily roles and responsibilities? What type of service are you trying to deliver? Put a metric for you, because if you put a metric for you, it will only make you that much more of an asset and a proactive leader within your HR organization. I think most importantly, we talked about the employee life cycle. For those of you who are new in HR, the employee life cycle or the HR life cycle is everything that you do when you work for a company. It's how HR and the business together attract, select, and onboard new candidates. It's how we find them. It's how we keep them. It's how we develop them and engage them and retain them. And most important, it's how we separate and outplace people. That whole life cycle is so critical to the experience and into the invocation of a company becoming an employer of choice, becoming a business that people want to know and be. Don't forget, an employer of choice doesn't happen overnight. And to have a strong employee value proposition, you have to do every single one of these items importantly. I think what's important to remember, what is important to remember, is as you look through the employee life cycle, how you recruit, how you select, how you attract, how you onboard new hires is equally as important to everything that goes into the middle. How you develop, how you performance manage, how you deal with your employee relations, how you engage your associates, how you retain them is equally as important to how you separate and outplace them. An employer of choice does not happen overnight. We saw the pages and pages of metrics, attributes that create an employee value proposition so that you become an employer of choice. To be the best of the best in HR teams and companies, right? Because I feel personally those HR teams develop the company to become that. It is a symbiotic relationship with operations and finance and HR. How people leave the organization is equally as important as how they come on, because people are huge either advocates or adversaries of social media now in your marketing. So just remember, knowing every part of the HR lifecycle or the employee lifecycle is critical. Your job is to be proactive versus reactive. We, no matter what, will always be an administrative type function, right? People have to get paid and have to have their benefits, and we want to make sure that we are keeping our companies from being sued and checking the boxes and checking the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. But that doesn't mean that's all we do. We can anticipate the future needs of the business because we're going to know our business. You are going to be a business leader who works in HR, and all of you will be dynamic as you move through your career. So do not forget that if you take it slow, you do one metric at a time, you will build your credibility within the business. Look through all the PowerPoints, they're up on YouTube. Those are yours to utilize and to reference. You have the best book you could possibly have for the beginning of HR metrics. I've been doing this a long time, and as I've told you over and over each week, I have ripped pages, highlighted, circled, crossed T's, dotted I's, made notes, more than I can ever explain on this book. He is a great practical innovator of metrics, and there are lots of articles that all of you have shared, and I'll be putting up for the group. And really think about what it is that you want to do in HR, where you want to go in HR, and regardless of what it is, make sure you're measuring your success. So last but not least, I want to thank all of you for being such a great group. This was my first jaunt here at UCI in their HR certification program, and it was wonderful. You were a very engaged group, just unbelievably smart and great at taking part of the discussions. Is my first truly online class. It was very exciting to see how engaged everyone was and the feedback that you gave to your peers. For those of you who this was your final class, congratulations. I'm very excited for you. For those of you who are your first class, I hope I didn't scare you. For those of you who are in the middle of your journey, good luck to you as you move on. I've put my LinkedIn in here. I would love to stay in touch with all of you. And with that, I hope you have a great rest of your fall as we move into the fall season, and have a wonderful holiday. Good luck to all of you, and thank you again for making this such a great 7 weeks. Bye.